This page is the cover, naturally, for N64 Pro, Issue 8 from June 1998. Right away you know what the big deal is. World Cup '98 dominates proceedings, fronted by a rather sharp-looking football player. Looks like our own Bex, doesn't it? The headline promises you'll know the score, which is rather clever for a mag covering both football and games. They've got the big hitters previewed or reviewed inside. You've got Konami's IS-98, which was shaping up to be the footy game to beat. Then there's a big feature on Yoshi's story, apparently making Mario 64 owners green with envy cheeky. Quake 64 gets a nod for its weapons, and Weetrix is here too, promising gallons of action and claiming it's better than Tetris. Big words that. They're also teasing previews of GT64, a racing game they reckon is a MRC beta, and G.ASP, a fighting game. Plus, they're rating every new game, and have a world-exclusive review of the main football game. Looks like they're covering peripherals, All-Star Baseball, and even have an update on the mythical all-new Zelda 64. A packed issue then, ready for the summer of football and gaming. This page gives us a look at some useful N64 peripherals, and, rather charmingly, introduces the team behind the magazine by showing them as kids. On the left, Blaze is advertising their 2-in-1 Jolt Pack and memory card. It's a neat piece of kit that combines the rumble function with a built-in memory card, saving you the hassle of swapping them over mid-game. It's compatible with your rumble pack games and memory card titles, all controlled by a simple switch. Seems like a practical solution for $14.99. They're also highlighting their VRF1 accelerator racing wheel and standard N64 memory cards. The right side is a fun section titled, The Team, When We Were Young. You get to see childhood photos of the staff members and learn a bit about their favorite things from their youth, toys, music, TV shows, sweets, and pets. It's a nice personal touch that lets you see the faces behind the magazine articles and find out what shaped their tastes long before they were reviewing 64 games. Looks like they were into things like Subbuteo, Adam and the Ants, the A-Team, and Curly Whirlies. A good bit of nostalgia mixed in with the hardware adverts. This page is the cover and contents for Issue 8, June 1998. It's dominated by a chap in a French football kit, clearly hyping up the World Cup '98 coverage inside. The main contents list breaks down everything from previews of upcoming games like Shadowman and Buck Bumble, to a hefty reviews section. They're tackling big titles like EA's World Cup '98, aiming to be the all-time greatest footy game. No small feat that, and Konami's GASP. The reviews also cover GT64, Yoshi's Story, Rampage World Tour, with a cheeky oh dear next to it classic, and the puzzle game Weetrix, which they boldly claim is better than Tetris. You've also got the regulars like news and feedback, features on peripherals, and essential codes. Tips and guides covering everything from Quake 64 to GoldenEye 007 cheats. And of course, the promise of free posters and stickers, including a World Cup wall chart. Looks like a solid issue packed with the good stuff. There's even a rather odd photo of a lady chewing on a controller cable next to a caption about dental floss, which is, a choice. This page kicks off with a look at those freebies mentioned on the cover. You get a peek at the free posters and sticker collection, including the World Cup wall chart and stickers, featuring classic N64 characters like Mario, Banjo-Kazooie, and even James Bond. Alex is on hand with some helpful advice on what to do with them, which is rather thoughtful. Center stage is a big preview for Earthworm Jim 3D, showing the classic character making the leap into the third dimension. It's announced as Worming This Way for Autumn '98, heading to N64, PC, and PlayStation. Over in the news section, there's talk of despair and disappointment surrounding the N64 DD, suffering yet another delay in Japan due to reported lack of confidence in the software lineup. They're hoping titles like Pocket Monsters or Donkey Kong Country 64 can eventually help turn things around. There's also a rather pointed piece titled Total Bollocks, taking a swipe at a rival magazine publisher, Rapide, over their claimed sales figures and publishing practices. Sounds like some good old industry rivalry going on there. Finally, a preview for Rush 2, Extreme Racing USA, the sequel to the arcade racer, which is set to feature racing across various locations like Hawaii and Las Vegas, with scoring for stunts. Looks like a decent follow-up is in the works. N64 news includes Acclaim cancelling their soccer game, while EA Sports acquired Tiburon, developer of Madden. UK charts show GoldenEye and Yoshi's Story remaining popular. A preview for the Superman game highlights free-roaming flight and classic villains. 1080 degrees snowboarding is delayed until November in the UK. Pokémon is shifting to cartridges with Monster Stadium bundled with the 64GB pack. Milo's Bowlerama, a futuristic bowling game, and the Blues Brothers 2000 game are also featured. Swoosewy. Please provide the text you want me to summarize. This page hits you with a massive N64 release schedule, all revamped and shiny, apparently better than before. There's a handy key telling you which color is which region, though they do warn that UK dates are often last minute. It's packed with lists of upcoming games, right through 98, and into the quarters beyond. They highlight NFL Blitz as one to watch, calling it a potential big hit, thanks to its fast action. Then there's the next big thing, which is Banjo-Kazooie, finally arriving after much hype, and even coming forward a month. There's also a little note about Shadowman, suggesting it could be a contender. Plus, you get a glimpse of Silicon Valley making progress, and a mention of Forsaken, which they thought looked pretty special. All this next to some rather striking artwork of a lady with blades on her arms. Just loads of great stuff coming down the pipe. This page continues with that massive release schedule, giving us even more games to look forward to in late 98 and into 99, plus a handy hardware section listing things like the 64DD and capture cartridge. Honestly, who can keep track of all this? Then we dive headfirst into the main event. Reviews. They lay out their system, showing off icons for official releases and imports, and that all-important stamp of approval for anything scoring over 89%. Looks like they've got 4 seasoned reviewers on the case, pooling over 80 years of experience, plus they're even letting a reader get in on the action for a review trip. This issue, we've got a solid lineup including G.ASP, GT64, the wonderfully weird Suzume, Airborder, the charming Yoshi's Story, the Big World Cup 98 football game, the destructive fun of Rampage, the puzzling Weetrix, and Wild Choppers. Nice mix of genres there, giving us plenty to sink our teeth into. Finally, we get to meet the team behind the scores, learning about their gaming preferences, who likes Sims, who loves adventure games, who's a shoot-'em-up fan. Always good to know the bias, eh? Oh, and another note about the 64DD being delayed again. Typical. This page gets stuck into the big review everyone's been waiting for. World Cup 98. Our sports correspondent, Paul Noel, is the man on the job, and he's straight into the crucial question. Can EA's latest footy offering finally manage to depose the reigning champion, International Superstar Soccer 64? Apparently, EA had a bit of a shaky start on the N64 with FIFA 64, but they claim World Cup 98, building on the RTWC engine, is a marked improvement and looks pretty promising. They're making a big song and dance about holding the official license for France 98, proclaiming it's the only true World Cup game you'll need this summer. Feature-wise, you get all the teams who qualified, plus a bunch who narrowly missed out, and a hefty selection of classic sides adding up to a grand total of 56 teams. They've even modeled all 10 of the host stadiums in accurate 3D, and the kits and players are rendered in detail right down to their bitmapped faces. The screenshots scattered about show plenty of in-game action, from keepers punching clear to spectacular overhead kicks. They even single out the player animations as being superb, which is always a good sign for a football game, isn't it? Looks like EA might just be onto a winner here. This page dives deeper into the World Cup 98 review, getting right into the nitty-gritty of the gameplay. It talks about how EA has packed in loads more spectacular moves and animations, captured via motion capture apparently, which sounds promising. The controls are detailed too, showing off how you'll be pulling off all these flicks and skills on the N64 pad. Yes, the review also touches on the in-game management options, allowing you to tweak formations and tactics mid-match. A useful feature pinched from elsewhere, but hey, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, right? A major point addressed is the goalkeeper AI, which, let's be honest, has been a bit ropey in past AI games. They claim it's vastly improved here, with keepers finally reacting properly and learning from mistakes, putting them in the David Seaman mold rather than being complete liabilities. Good to hear. Pace is also discussed, with variable speed options to cater to different tastes, although they warn the fastest setting can get a bit comical with players legging it around. Finally, the Scouts Report Roundup gives a quick summary, noting EA's strength in presentation and options, improved goalkeepers, but hinting it might still struggle against the mighty ISS 64. It sounds like a solid step up for eFooty on the N64. This page wraps up the World Cup 98 review, giving it a solid 87% overall, which, after reading the lowlights, seems rather generous, doesn't it? While acknowledging the improvements over previous versions, the review points out the goalkeepers are still appalling despite the claims they're world-class, and the tackling feels woolly and indistinct. Apparently it still can't quite touch the mighty ISS-64, especially with the removal of the 5-side option, which was a shame. Reader reviews seem mixed, some liking it, others feeling it's not much of a step up. Then we shift gears entirely to Weetrix, asking the question, is it floodlit? This looks like a rather unique puzzle game involving water and strange creatures, getting rave reviews from other magazines. It promises constant excitement and non-stop challenges, with some truly incredible effects. The quotes highlighted give it scores like 91% and 93%, suggesting it's a must-buy, even if you're not usually into puzzle games. Sounds like one to track down if you fancy something a bit different. This page jumps into a review of G.ASP, Fighters Next Stream, Konami's attempt at a beat-em-up for the N64. The reviewer wonders if it's a dream game or just a rankster, which is a wonderfully silly way to put it. Apparently this is the imported Japanese version, as the UK and US release was titled Deadly Arts, probably because G.ASP and Nextstream aren't exactly catchy. The graphics get a lot of praise, particularly the detailed characters and backgrounds, even suggesting they look better than fighters in games like Tekken or Virtua Fighter. Strong words. The arenas are interactive too, letting you smash things up. However, the animation is a bit of a letdown. Despite claims of motion capture, the movement is described as jerky, which sounds like it could really mess with the gameplay. On the plus side, there's a character creation mode, which is highlighted as one of the best features, letting you build your own fighter from scratch. We see screenshots of various characters like Killer Konga and Mika, and some interesting locations like a bus depot and a snowy landscape. There's even a humorous note about pop star Bjork making a guest appearance. Overall, it seems like a game with some great ideas and visuals, but perhaps let down by slightly clunky animation, leaving the reviewer feeling it's not quite the definitive N64 fighter the console is waiting for. Still, sounds like it has its moments, especially that character customization. This page delivers the verdict on G.ASP, Fighters Next Stream, and apparently, it's a bit of a letdown, despite the promising looks mentioned previously. The reviewer, Mark, expresses palpable disappointment, stating he thought it would be the greatest beat-em-up ever, but it's just middle of the road. He acknowledges the great graphics, characters and interactive backgrounds are all there, but the core issue is the gameplay, which he describes as jerky and unresponsive, turning fights into button-mashing affairs. We get a look at the gallery of fighting cocks, showing off characters like Jimmy, Killer Konga, and Miki, who all look pretty good. The Weird Science section highlights the character creation mode again, confirming it's a decent feature. However, the short of breath and gameplay shock horror sections really hammer home the point that looking good isn't enough if the game feels sluggish and the controls aren't sharp. The reviewer even suggests Konami might have been better off looking at Virtua Fighter or Tekken for inspiration rather than Mortal Kombat or Mace. The page also includes reader feedback, with folks mostly agreeing it's an average fighter, not the N64 savior some might have hoped for. The score breakdown confirms the poor gameplay rating, dragging the overall score down to a respectable, but clearly disappointing 80% compared to the reviewer's initial hopes. This page dives into the world of GT64, Imagineer's street racing title, published by Ocean for 1 or 2 players, if you fancy a mate getting in the way. If you're a speed freak who fancies bombing around the streets of Japan in souped UP saloons, then this looks right up your alley. The review kicks off by mentioning the graphics are based on real streets and appear exceptional, while the sounds apparently let your engine rip. They compare the feel to arcade racers like Ridge Racer and Daytona, suggesting a fast-paced, perhaps less simulation-heavy experience than the Gran Turismo name might imply. You get to pick your race, team, and car, with models like the Nissan Skyline and Toyota Supra on offer, all authentically modeled with marvelous detail. There are also car setup options to tinker with, from transmission to tires and spoilers, showing a nod towards realism. However, the reviewer points out that GT64 is a grueling and difficult affair. Qualifying alone takes time, and the championship is demanding. The courses are unforgiving, especially the corners, which can lead to cursing and slamming into walls. Sounds like my kind of challenge, frankly. Despite the detailed cars, they note a frustrating lack of spec screens. Overall, it sounds like a realistic-leaning yet arcade-feeling racer that doesn't pull its punches on difficulty. This page carries on the review of GT64, and it seems the struggle is real. Apparently, trying to steer these motors is akin to wrestling alligators. Sounds like my kind of fun, frankly. You'll likely need to drop the difficulty initially, which tells you something. Despite the authentic real-world cars and teams, The review reckons the handling is a bit off, more like a dodgem car than a serious racer. Realism takes a holiday too, with no car damage and even a mention of a dodgy-looking gypsy bloke graphical detail appearing. Ultimately, the verdict leans towards GT64 being an arcade racer in simulation clothing, comparing it to other N64 and PC racers like Top Gear Rally and Todeka. The screenshots show off the rather nice car models and racing views, like pit stops and city circuits. It lands a solid 82% overall on the N64 scoreboard, with the graphics getting high praise, though gameplay, sound and lastability are deemed just decent enough. There are a few other punters chipping in with their opinions down the side too. This page dives headfirst into the world of Suzume, a puzzle game from Konami that boldly claims to be better than Puyo Puyo Sun. Well, that's a gauntlet thrown down, isn't it? It seems the Japanese fascination with anime girls continues unabated, popping up in this irrelevant puzzle game setting. Hey, if it keeps the crime rate down, maybe they're onto something. The core game is apparently a derivative of Tetris, which sounds promising, involving manipulating colored blobs that disappear when grouped. There's a humorous panel discussion trying to define the term Suzume, bouncing ideas around like it's a regional rugby league term or something to do with sumo wrestling fans. Bit daft, but amusing. They also link game characters to classic rock songs in a section called Je suis un rockstar, which is a bit random but good for a chuckle if you know your tunes. Beyond the main game, there are a couple of sub-games, one involving arranging blobs, and another that's just 10-pin bowling. Apparently it's all quite enjoyable, despite looking similar to last month's Puyo Puyo Sun, with eye-catching, bizarre characters, and plenty of chain reactions to keep you hooked. This page carries on with the Susume review, giving it a solid N64 score of 77%. The yellow box summary clarifies that while the other two sub-games weren't amazing, the 4-player 10-pin bowling really lifted the package, pushing it from the unfulfilling pile into the good effort category. It reiterates that Susume is definitely better than Puyo Puyo Sun, which they reviewed last month, but perhaps not a must-buy unless you're a huge versus puzzle game fan. There's a swings and roundabouts section showing some 2-player action screenshots, highlighting moments of insanity as the game progresses. The definition of sound chat from the previous page continues, trying to pin down what the title, Susume, actually means, leading to a bit of playful banter between the reviewers. Reader feedback is included, with various chaps weighing in. The consensus seems to be that the sub-games, particularly the bowling, are the highlight, making it great fun for multiplayer, even if the main puzzle game isn't revolutionary. It's noted as a good alternative to Tetris or Bust a Move, especially in competitive play. We also see the visual scoring breakdown, with graphics getting a decent nod, gameplay rated highly, and lastability getting a fair score. The rest of the page is dedicated to a rather large advert from Excitement Direct, selling a whole raft of N64 games and accessories, everything from controllers and rumble packs to steering wheels and various pads. They also mention a trade-in service. A review of Airborder 64, a futuristic jetboarding game for the N64, begins. The game, inspired by 1080 degrees snowboarding, features a rocket-powered skateboard, offering extreme speeds and tricks. Players must complete tracks filled with checkpoints against a timer, earning points for tricks, and progressing through ranks. Open, varied tracks offer freedom to explore, including forest courses, snow-filled cities, and even water courses. The N64 controller setup is detailed, and character customization is available, with different character styles and skill sets for varied gameplay experiences. The game prioritizes style and exploration over direct racing, promising a challenging yet fun experience. Parryim. A review of Airborder 64 continues, highlighting the game's massive levels, including the staircase and a giant house level. Gameplay emphasizes tricks and exploration over straightforward racing, with challenges like a coin hunt. Graphics are praised as mint, but the open levels can be confusing, and the main objective feels repetitive. A lack of a competitive race mode is a significant disappointment. Despite these issues, the reviewer and other staff members enjoyed the originality, excellent courses, and fun factor. The game scores an 84% and is recommended for fans of extreme sports. This page dives straight into a review of Yoshi's Story. The headline pulls no punches, suggesting a less than stellar first impression with the rather vivid, scrape the vomit stains out of the carpet, Yoshi's Back title. The reviewer recounts his previous, apparently regrettable, 79% score for the Japanese version, and seems keen to justify or update his opinion on the US release. We see plenty of colorful screenshots showing off the game's unique 2D storybook style. There are images of different colored Yoshis munching on various fruits, bananas, apples, watermelons and grapes, implying that dietary preferences might be a thing for these little chaps. Gameplay shots highlight the egg-throwing mechanic, encountering obstacles like a giant elephant, using your tongue on exclamation marks, and bouncing off Mr. Balloon. The reviewer touches on the puzzles, sarcastically noting they seem designed with the younger players, under 12s, in mind. Despite the initial harshness of the title, the text suggests the US version is certainly a whole lot more appealing than its Japanese predecessor. There are glimpses of enemies like bombs and fish, and the useful Ms. Warp character is shown for transportation. It seems the reviewer feels this version addresses some past issues, particularly language barriers that previously hampered the experience. This page continues the deep dive into the Yoshi story review. We're shown a massive, cheerful Yoshi right off the bat. The reviewer breaks down the game structure, explaining there are 24 levels across 6 sections, but you only need to clear one stage per section to see the ending, a point they seem to find. Brief. There are great shots highlighting all the typical Yoshi shenanigans, eating Shy Guys for eggs, sniffing out secrets with a friendly pooch, pulling off flutter jumps, and diving into vibrant underwater areas. A handy controller diagram shows exactly how you pull off all these moves, from lobbing eggs with the Z trigger, to ground pounding with the analog stick. The text delves into the game's length and difficulty, or perceived lack thereof. The reviewer mentions finishing the game in around 3 hours the first time through, and rather snarkily dubs it the N64 gaming equivalent of Eddie the Eagle Edwards. A playful jab at its accessibility perhaps, not its quality mind you. However, they quickly point out that the real challenge, the pulp addiction, and the massive hairy melons of it all, comes from chasing high scores by collecting all the fruit and hearts, which offers a surprising amount of replayability for the determined player. It seems the simple act of finishing is just the appetizer. The main course is mastering each level for score. The next page carries on with the Yoshi's story review. Front and center is a massive, rather pleased-looking Yoshi ready for action. We get a proper look at how Yoshi operates, using that famous long tongue to grab enemies and fruit, turning them into eggs to launch about the place. Apparently, you can collect eggs by finding them dotted around or, more efficiently, by eating the baddies themselves. The reviewer touches on the length again, noting the PAL version, thankfully, seems more satisfying than the original Japanese release, despite not quite delivering all the hoped-for changes. Good to know they preferred the anglicized version, saved us importers a bob or two back then. Cool. Loads of screenshots show off the lovely, papercraft visual style. There's Yoshi bouncing off clouds that disappear quickly, underwater sections with hidden goodies, and different enemies like the skeletal figure spitting fireballs. We also get introductions to some of the characters you'll meet. The villainous baby Bowser, those utterly cowardly Shy Guys, a terrifying-looking bullet, and a helpful sniffer dog for hunting secrets. Finally, the N64 score panel gives the overall verdict, a rather healthy 88%. The reviewer's concluding thought is that Yoshi's story defies the idea that 2D platformers were past it, calling it absolutely fantastic, magical, and a pure joy, suggesting it's the definitive 2D platformer on the console and hard to imagine being surpassed. A little side panel features feedback from readers giving their own quick takes on the game. This page gives us the lowdown on Rampage World Tour for the N64. You see the familiar monsters, George the Ape, Lizzie the Dinosaur, and Ralph the Werewolf, looking like they're about to stomp all over the globe, which is exactly what the game's about. There are a few screenshots showing off the action, which mainly consists of these chaps smashing buildings in various cities. The review itself is a bit of a laugh at first, done in a queue and a format where the editor answers some frankly daft questions people ask him about his job. However, when it gets to the game, the tone takes a nosedive. The reviewer absolutely lays into Rampage World Tour, calling it a completely dated, woeful use of the N64's power, and a total waste of time and money. He reckons it's nothing more than a rip-off from a decade prior, comparing it unfavorably to pretty much any half-decent 64 game. The reader feedback echoes the sentiment, mostly suggesting it's pretty poor stuff, and the final verdict is delivered loud and clear with a frankly terrible N64 score of just 33%. Looks like being a giant monster smashing cities wasn't quite the thrill on 64 everyone might have hoped for. A review of Wild Choppers for the N64 criticizes the game. While the concept of a 3D desert strike is intriguing, the execution is flawed. Graphics are described as bland and blurry with noticeable pop-up, and the controls are deemed bizarre and counterintuitive, hindering gameplay. Reader feedback aligns with the negative review, and the final score reflects this, with a disappointing 58%. The reviewer ultimately recommends sticking with the original Desert Strike. Volca. The next page jumps into a review for Weetrix, a rather brilliant puzzle game that truly deserves your attention, even if the reviewer starts off confessing he's having trouble getting you hyped. You can tell he's fond of it though, calling it possibly the finest puzzle game since Tetris and the most addictive N64 game he's played. It's a cracking idea from the Mank lads at Ocean and ZZ2. You're basically building landscapes with 3D shapes to contain water, creating lakes and channels, all while dealing with pesky things like mines, bombs that blow holes everywhere, and fireballs that make your water evaporate. The cast includes characters like Spike the Mine, Wetboy who brings the water, and Bernie who melts your carefully constructed lakes. The screenshots give you a good look at the isometric view and the challenges you face, like leaky areas and those floating mines. It even has a two-player mode and weapons like Ice and Quake, which sounds like a right laugh. Forget that wild choppers mess from the last page. Weetrix sounds like proper N64 gold. Weetrix, a puzzle game for the N64, is praised in a review for its unique gameplay, 6 modes, and challenging mechanics. Players manage water flow by building structures, utilizing features like bombs, arrows, and score multipliers, like a rubber ducky. A 2-player split-screen mode and challenge options are highlighted. The review notes clever core mechanics, detailed N64 controller instructions, and positive team reviews, awarding it a 91% score. The game is deemed an addictive, original puzzle experience, potentially surpassing Tetris. This page serves up a quick reference guide to the reviews you've just seen, neatly laid out in alphabetical order. You've got games like Airborder 64, Weetrix, that brilliant puzzler from the last page, Gasp, Wild Choppers, GT64, World Cup 98, Rampage World Tour, sounds like the reviewer wasn't a fan of that one, Yoshi's Story and Suzume, all with their scores and a brief summary. It's handy for seeing at a glance how things stacked up, with some pretty solid scores for Weetrix, GT64, and Yoshi's Story. There's also a small section where the N64 Pro lot share their personal thoughts on some of the month's games. Flipping over, we dive headfirst into the Quake 64 walkthrough, this being part 1. It's promising to be your guide through the murky depths, offering help against all sorts of nasty gribblies. There are some general combat tips thrown in for good measure, like how to deal with groups, or exploit weak spots. The page is peppered with atmospheric screenshots of the game world, and some rather imposing enemies to get you prepped for the fight ahead. Looks like a proper deep dive into Eid's classic shooter. This Quake 64 walkthrough continues with general combat tips, including movement, jumping, and rocket jumping. It emphasizes knowing the map for resources like health, armor, and ammo. The walkthrough details weapons, from axes to thunderbolts, highlighting their strengths and weaknesses. It guides players through Area 1, the Slipgate complex, revealing secrets like hidden caverns and mega health. Finally, a Quake bestiary introduces enemies like Rottweilers, Grunts, and Ogres, offering strategies for defeating them based on their attack patterns. This page carries on with the definitive Quake 64 guide, picking up where we left off in Area 1 and moving swiftly into the horrors of Area 2, Castle of the Damned, and Area 3, the Necropolis. Right then, let's crack on. Warrington Area 1. After wrapping up Area 1, and hopefully nabbing that quad damage, we're plunged into Area 2, which apparently involves a fair bit of swimming, oh joy. But stick with it, and you'll find that glorious double-barreled shotgun, and maybe even stumble into a couple of secret areas, potentially looping back to past levels via slipgates. Keep an eye out for the silver key to progress. Beat your Teti, then it's on to Area 3, the Necropolis. Sounds cheerful, doesn't it? Naturally, it's packed with zombies, ogres, and those utterly infuriating fiends. The guide walks you through finding keys, navigating lifts, dealing with the local nasties, and uncovering more secret spots. There's mention of an underwater cave, and even a path to a secret level, Ziggurat Vertigo, if you fancy a detour. Finally, there's a breakdown of a few more charming residents you'll be dealing with. The explosive spawn, the lightning-fast fiend, the projectile-spamming Vor, and the big huggable shambler. Handy tips on how best to put them down, mostly involving lots of lead and dodging like your life depends on it, because it does. Next issue promises the thrilling conclusion. This page kicks off the legendary cheat zone, sponsored by Interact no less. The headline screams, "You cheating bastard percent," which pretty much sets the tone for what's inside. Apparently things aren't quiet on the N64 front at all, as we're promised loads of new cheats for a bunch of cracking games. They're even offering 20 quid in prizes for good cheats sent in. Worth digging out those old notebooks for, eh? We've got cheats for everything from 1080 degrees snowboarding, letting you unlock different borders, to Quake 64 with a handy debug mode, and a note on all the glorious gore. GoldenEye 007 is still hanging around, proving its staying power with a cheat for one of the missions. Then there's Puyo Puyo Sun 64, a proper puzzler, where you can mess about by choosing opponents or, brilliantly, turn characters into elephants. San Francisco Rush gets a look in too, with codes to skip ahead to the Jailhouse Rock circuit, and a rather involved method to get an F1 car and save it. Finally, just in case you're still baffled, there's a diagram showing you where all those blasted buttons are on the N64 controller. Seems they're really laying it all out for you here. This page keeps the cheat action coming. Still in the legendary cheat zone, sponsored by Interact of course. Jetajer, we're getting stuck into some serious business here. First up, it's Top Gear Rally, offering cheats to unlock all the cars and tracks right from the off. No messing about. They've even got codes for specific car types like an ice cube car and a beach ball car, which sounds utterly daft but brilliant, and a way to change your car's color for that personal touch. Apparently, if you're tired of racing that clapped out banger, you can use these to fly around. Right then. Woo! Next, we hit the slopes with Snowboard Kids. For those who can't be bothered to unlock everything properly, there's a cheat to get all the tracks, boards, and characters. It even mentions it was sent in by a reader, Alex Welsh, who's getting a prize. Nice one, Alex. Screenshots show characters and the game in action. Finally, we delve into the colorful world of Yoshi's story. It's packed with hints and cheats. Unlimited continues handy. Tips on finding those elusive white Shy Guys, how to get the black and white Yoshis and their special eggs, popping bubbles without eggs, who knew, rotating the pop-up book, an obvious trick? Maybe not for everyone. And even a secret message from Yoshi himself hidden in the minigames. Looks like there's plenty to keep you busy in Yoshi's story, beyond just eating everything in sight. This page dives into a highly anticipated preview of International Superstar Soccer 98. The big question posed here is whether it's more than just a game, and crucially, whether it's the one that will finally make us put down ISS 64. According to the chaps here, it's looking like a strong contender. They've noticed a significant boost in pace over the PAL version of ISS 64, which sounds proper quick. Visually, it's familiar, but apparently, the players are more distinguishable now. Gone are the days of everyone looking a bit samey. The replay system gets a shout out for adding details like the referee, linesman, and even a steward for substitutions. Nice little touches that add to the immersion. Commentary is handled by Tony Guba, which they say is a step up from the previous game's mutterings. Goalkeepers have been a point of contention, but Konami is promising improvements with better AI and animations. And there's a mention of a realistic first touch mechanic, where players actually wait for the ball before controlling it. Sounds like it could take some getting used to but adds depth. You can even create players with different heights, judging by the screenshots. Looks like IS 8 is shaping up nicely then. This page continues our deep dive into International Superstar Soccer 98. It seems Konami have really been busy refining the gameplay here, adding more control over attacking and tackles, though it sounds like you might still miscue a volley now and then. Typical. The big news on free kicks are these banana shots, giving you way more control over height and swerve with the analog stick, apparently like Carlos-level bending. They also claim you can control the wall, which sounds Warrington Mewa. Interesting. Tackling gets some love too, with new animations, including players rolling around in pain like they've been shot. Player motivation is a thing now. Give a player the armband and they might just perform better, and team morale affects things too. You can even change tactics mid-game with 16 different strategies to choose from, which is a neat touch for tactical maestros. There's a bit of a rant about the Konami boys taking the cartridge back, which, let's be honest, is fair enough when you're dying to play it properly. The overall verdict from the World Cup predictions section is overwhelmingly positive, suggesting ISS 98 looks set to carry on the legacy and, dare I say it, improve on ISS 64, which is high praise indeed. The N64 Pro panel lads weigh in with their thoughts, all seeming pretty excited and confident this is the real deal. Looks like the best football game just got better, eh? This page dives headfirst into the dark world of Shadowman, described here as Acclaim's latest, Gorefest adventure. Apparently, it's all about Michel Leroy, a voodoo warrior who gets a spiritual mask implanted in his chest and wages war on an evil cabal responsible for a whole heap of serial killings. Sounds cheerful, doesn't it? The vibe is definitely mean, moody and macabre, so if you're after something fluffy like Yoshi's Story, look away now. The game promises a third-person perspective with full camera control, packed with adventure and puzzle solving alongside the combat. You'll be wielding weapons like the .50 Desert Eagle and the Shadow Gun to dispatch an evil horde of serial killers and their minions. Lovely. They're banging on about groundbreaking technology and huge realistic environments, spanning the entire globe and the Dead Realm. The article suggests it takes inspiration from everything from Resident Evil and Romero flicks to Clive Barker's Hellraiser and the movie Seven, quite the mix. The control method is mentioned, aiming for multiple simultaneous actions, unlike the sometimes frustrating setup in Tomb Raider. Overall, it sounds like a promisingly dark and atmospheric action-adventure game, set to launch sometime in '98. Definitely not one for the faint of heart, but should make a nice change from Mary Bloody Poppins anyway. The next page brings us a look at a couple of Ubisoft titles, primarily focusing on Tonic Trouble. This looks like a rather colourful action-adventure, starring a purple alien chap called Ed, who apparently causes an environmental kerfuffle and has to sort it out. It's running on a new engine they've cooked up in Paris, promising fancy character expressions and reactions. The article highlights Ed's abilities. He can jump, run, swim, glide, climb, and mess about with objects using his stick, which sounds pretty standard platformer stuff. But it also mentions some wonderfully bonkers enemies, like killer vegetables, lunatic toasters, and aggressive corn. You'll be up against villains like Groid the Hellish too. Alongside the text there's some character artwork, including a rather unsettling close-up of Ed's face, and several in-game screenshots showing off the environments and the slightly blocky but charming look of the game. The preview box confirms it's developed by Ubisoft in Paris, it's playable, and it's getting close to completion, aiming for a summer release. Buck Bumble is also mentioned in the title and info box, though the main text here seems solely dedicated to Ed's adventures. Looks like a decent platformer romp in the making, aiming to give Mario 64 a run for its money in the 3D World department. This page dives into the other Ubisoft title we briefly mentioned last time, Buck Bumble. Now this one's a proper 3D shoot-'em-up, not a platformer like Tonic Trouble. You're Buck, an irate bee, tasked with taking on the evil herd, a bunch of nasty mutant insects who want to take over the world. Sounds balmy, exactly what we need. The game boasts 27 missions, some hidden, spread across 3 zones. You'll be flying around, blasting away with devastating shooting, and even picking up weaponry from fallen foes, which is a nice touch. There are primary and secondary objectives, adding a bit more depth than just shoot everything. You've got a choice of camera views too, from a frantic first-person perspective to a more tactical third-person one. The preview highlights some decent-looking screenshots and artwork of Buck and the armored bees you'll be facing. It sounds like a solid, action-packed, third-party shooter, aiming for release this autumn. Alongside the preview, you've got a couple of pages dedicated to adverts for game imports and accessories, which are always handy if you're after something a bit different or need a new case for your cartridges. This page is all about Acclaim, previewing what they've got lined up. Given there's apparently a near-complete software drought, as the headline quips, you can apparently rely on Acclaim to be there, handing out ice-cold bottles of Oasis. Right then, they're previewing a few bits, including the sequel Extreme G2, South Park, All-Star Baseball 98, and Turok 2. Extreme G2 is the main focus, picking up from the well-received original. It sounds like they're building on it with more speed, naturally, gravity-defying tracks, more bikes to choose from, and multiplayer options. They've even got some concept art and screenshots that look pretty slick, suggesting the tracks are getting a bit more inventive. Then there's the utterly bonkers news that they're making a South Park game. Yes, that's South Park. They've announced PC and console titles based on the hugely popular, and quite frankly rude, animated show. The page features some images of the main gang, Stan, Kyle, Cartman and Kenny, naturally he's in a toilet, plus Chef and a rather strange image of a cow, and one of Cartman with a fart sign. Acclaim and Comedy Central seem chuffed about it, hyping up the show's popularity and promising to capture its unique humor. It sounds like they're planning a big marketing push too, hoping for success like they had with Turok and NFL Quarterback Club. Should be interesting to see how that turns out. This page continues the look at what Acclaim are bringing to the N64, specifically diving into All-Star Baseball 99 and the highly anticipated Turok 2, Seeds of Evil. First up, Gary Newman's team are behind All-Star Baseball 99, and apparently it's shaping up to be the best-looking baseball game on the console. The screenshots certainly look impressive, showing off detailed players and stadiums, They're bigging up the animation and graphics, saying it's incredibly smooth, though they admit the frame rate needs a bit of work before release. Seems like it's got plenty of options and licensing too, which is good news for the fans. Worry. Then there's Turok 2, they're calling it a comeback for dinosaurs, which sounds right up my street. It's using an advanced engine, promises new enemy AI and a movie-quality soundtrack. Gameplay-wise, there's a quest mode like the first game, but the big news is the multiplayer deathmatch modes like Bloodlust for straight fragging and Frag Tag, which sounds like a chow-tick game of it. The levels are described as sprawling and full of secrets, continuing the exploration from the original. The story sounds a bit mad, involving some ancient evil called the Primogen being accidentally woken up, and Turok having to stop it by destroying these energy totems. The screenshots show off some nasty-looking dinosaurs and detailed, atmospheric environments. Looks like it's going to be a proper step up from the first game. This page is all about the prizes. Looks like N64 Pro is back with their third biggest giveaway ever. They're giving away a whole load of swag. There's a cool Wishmaster t-shirt pictured, along with screenshots hinting at some of the prizes like eWorld Cup 98 gear, and maybe some GT64 goodies, given the racing screenshot. They've got a bunch of questions you need to answer to be in with a chance, covering everything from Arthurian legends for Sword for Truth manga, Genie etiquette for the Wishmaster shirts, Supergirl movies, and even the Vicar of Dibley for some Preacher graphic novels. Plus, there are questions about eWorld Cup 98 and some obscure football trivia about the 66 World Cup, as well as what GT stands for in GT64. All you have to do is fill out the form with your details and send it in by the end of May. Seems like a decent haul of prizes up for grabs. They've even listed the winners from the previous giveaway, so you know it's legit. Get your thinking cap on if you want a chance at winning. This page delves into N64 add-ons and peripherals, highlighted by Noeli. A peripheral chart lists top 5, including the original Nintendo controller, Action Replay, racing wheels, and an Interact controller. The Guillermo Race Leader 64 steering wheel and pedals are reviewed as a solid, affordable option despite flimsy pedals. Logic 3's alternative rumble packs, some with built-in memory, are also discussed. A news section mentions a £300 Philips Scuba headset for VR gaming on N64 and other platforms, and a new Pocket Monster Stadium cartridge for transferring and battling Game Boy monsters on N64. This page is dedicated to the Goal of the Month, showcasing 6 of the best goals from the game ISS, or GQ World Soccer 3. Seems they've moved on from NHL Breakaway 98, thank goodness. It features screenshots and descriptions of 6 notable goals, labeled A through F. Some seem inspired by legendary real-life moments, like Jeff Hurst's goal from the '66 World Cup final against West Germany, Goal A, and another featuring Beckenbauer, Moore, and Banks from that same match, Goal B. Others highlight players like Rolf Harris, yes, that Rolf Harris Goal C, Martin Peters and Jeff Hurst again, Goal D, Platini, Goal E, and Ruschateau, Goal F. Each goal is broken down into a few steps with accompanying screen grabs, showing off the game's action replay capabilities. There's also a Tricks of the Trade section offering useful gameplay tips for turning away from markers and executing chip shots with swerve. They even detail how to pull off the unguided shots for those long-range screamers that can really cause the keeper bother. Finally, they announce the winner of the March Goal of the Month from last month's featured game, NHL Breakaway 98, told you they moved on, which went to Justin Jones. You're encouraged to vote for your favorite from this batch, for a chance to win an N64 game. This page is quite the mixed bag, showcasing what looks like a new look for the magazine, featuring a whopping Tekken 3 cover story with Jin Kazama looking ready for a scrap, alongside a chunky guide for Resident Evil 2 Leon's Nightmare. Indeed, they're promising over 100 pages of PlayStation goodness, including that Re2 walkthrough and even World Cup souvenir bits. On the right, it's a blast from the past. They're flogging off the last few N64 Pro back issues for a mere £3 a pop. Looks like the early ones featuring FIFA and San Francisco Rush are long gone, no surprise there, but you can still snag issues covering Extreme G, Yoshi's Story, the Nagano Winter Olympics Games, Snowboard Kids, and the rather excellent 1080 Degrees Snowboarding. Some decent gaming history up for grabs there, complete with original free gifts, if you're lucky. And naturally, there's a handy order form at the bottom if you fancy filling the gaps in your collection. The next page is all about getting your hands on the latest N64 Pro, and they're throwing in a proper good offer to sweeten the deal. Subscribe, and you can get either a free official Nintendo Joypad and yes, you can pick your preferred color, which is a nice touch, or the essential rumble pack and controller pack combo. Can't argue with free gear, can you? Audi, they're pushing the subscription hard, promising delivery straight to your door, free of charge if you're in the UK, and guaranteeing you'll never miss an issue. Always a good thing when you're trying to keep up with all the N64 goodness. They even have a 24-hour hotline for credit card subscribers if filling out the form feels like too much effort. There's also a section detailing the different subscription rates depending on where you live and how you pay, along with a direct debit option that gives you a $5 back. Seems like they really want you on board. This page is big news if you're a PlayStation fanatic, announcing the arrival of a brand new magazine dedicated purely to Sony's grey box PlayStation Zone. They're coming out swinging, promising to be the crap-free zone for players fed up with duff cheats and solutions, which, let's be honest, we've all encountered plenty of back in the day. The cover gives you a taste of what's inside, focusing heavily on the absolute classics, Resident Evil 1 and 2. They're teasing the full bloody Monty, and every blood-curdling tip you could possibly need for both games, which sounds spot on for navigating those zombie-infested mansions and police stations. Beyond survival horror, they're packing in a huge 2,000 cheats right from the get-go, plus reviews for solid titles like Gex 3D, Motorhead, Need for Speed 3, and Everybody's Golf. They're also spilling platinum secrets for gems like Die Hard Trilogy, Micro Machines, and Destruction Derby 2. Looks like they're covering a good spread of the big hitters. For a launch issue, they're even throwing in a free phone cheats hotline card, which is a neat little bonus. All this packed into 132 pages for just £2.99. Definitely seems like they're aiming to be the go-to source for all things PlayStation from day one. It's on sale April 23rd. Mark your calendars. The N64 magazine features a lively feedback page showcasing global fan opinions. Readers from Australia and Scotland praise the magazine's content, particularly the ISS64 guide and GoldenEye coverage, while others discuss game costs and N64 peripherals. A debate ensues regarding the superiority of ISS64 versus FIFA 98. The magazine responds, confirming Grand Theft Auto 64 won't be released for the N64. The page also clarifies frame rates, addresses Zelda 64 performance, and tackles reader questions about color issues in screenshots. Visually engaging with images of peripherals, games, and even a celebrity, the page demonstrates a vibrant N64 community. The pro-post feedback section is packed with reader letters and images, including Conquer the Squirrel, GoldenEye characters, and ISS64 gameplay. Readers are discussing the lack of survival horror games on the N64 compared to PlayStation, questioning the magazine's subscription value, and debating screenshot color palettes. Score challenges for DK Racing and the secret ISS64 goal technique are also highlighted. Finally, a debate about Mace, the Dark Ages fighting game merits compared to others, is underway, noting advancements in N64 graphics. This page kicks off an ultimate guide to N64 gaming, aiming to sort the wheat from the chaff for us discerning players. It dives straight into the top-rated games according to both N64 Pro itself and an average from other magazines. You'll see the usual suspects like Diddy Kong Racing, GoldenEye, and Super Mario 64 sitting pretty at the top. Then we get into some reviews, covering a real mix. There's high praise for new entry, 1080 Degrees Snowboarding, calling it thoroughly wonderful and the best snowboarding game ever. Diddy Kong Racing also gets the stamp of approval Bootprint logo and is lauded as jaw-droppingly outstanding. On the flip side, games like Clay Fighter 63 1/3 and Dual Heroes are politely ripped apart for being deeply poor and awkward attempts at beat'em-ups. Cruisin' USA is dismissed as incredibly dated, while Duke Nukem 64 gets a nod for its frantic style and deathmatch, but is still placed below GoldenEye. We also see reviews for Augusta Masters, Automobili Lamborghini, which sounds a bit of a mess, Bomberman 64, Chameleon Twist, Dark Rift, Doom 64, an obligatory classic, Extreme G, Aero Gauge, Aero Fighters Assault, and Blast Core. The latter described as incredibly addictive and a right good blast. It's a solid rundown covering various genres, giving us the lowdown on what's worth our time and money. This N64 guide provides a comprehensive overview of the console's games. Starting with a Bond-themed introduction, it details scores, screenshots, and brief reviews for various titles. Popular games like GoldenEye 007 and Mario Kart 64 are included, alongside sports titles, racers, fighters, platformers, and more. The guide highlights a diverse range of genres, from familiar favorites to lesser-known games like Mystical Ninja. It also notes some titles that didn't perform as well, like Jeopardy and Mortal Kombat Mythologies. Overall, the guide gives a good sense of the N64's diverse software library. This page dives into the N64 software library with a mixed bag of reviews. You've got absolute stone-cold classics like Super Mario 64 and Pilotwings 64 still scoring through the roof, proving their staying power. Nagano Winter Olympics also gets a surprisingly high score, apparently holding up well in the office for some multiplayer fun. There are some new faces too, like Quake 64 and Robotron 64, arriving with a bit of fanfare and decent scores, adding some classic arcade shooting action to the console. WCW vs NWO brings the wrestling chows, and Yoshi's story looks adorable while promising plenty of secrets. Of course, not everything's a winner. Games like War Gods and Wheel of Fortune land squarely at the bottom of the heap, which frankly isn't much of a surprise for anyone who played them back then. Shadows of the Empire also doesn't fare brilliantly. San Francisco Rush and Snowboard Kids represent the racers, getting solid scores. Overall, it's a good snapshot of the console's varied profile, covering everything from platformers and racers to fighters and puzzlers, showing the hits and misses still populating the N64 shelves. And check out that wave race image at the bottom, still looking sharp. The next page gives us a cracking look at what's coming up in the next issue, and there's plenty to get excited about. They're previewing reviews for the likes of ISS 98, BioTetris, and Predator Racing, while promising hints and tips for essential titles like Quake 64 and GoldenEye 007 handy for anyone still needing a hand with those. There are also special updates slated for Banjo-Kazooie, Zelda 64, and F-Zero X, alongside previews for big hitters like Turok 2 and Mission Impossible. A major highlight looks set to be a world-exclusive review for Acclaim's Forsaken, hyped as a definite chart-topper. Taking up a good chunk of the page is a cool image of a futuristic character, armed and ready, looking like something straight out of a sci-fi shooter. The rest of the page is all about the Special Reserve mail order service. They're pushing their discount offers on software, details on how to join their club for extra benefits like prize competitions, and a massive list of games and hardware you can order. There are also key dates for upcoming releases, and a rundown of the free gifts you can grab with your purchase like memory cards or controllers. It's basically your old-school Amazon for getting your gaming fix delivered straight to your door,